My mom stole my $250,000 trust fund. My dad evicted her and gave me the family business. She told me to be the bigger person. I told the sheriff to serve the lawsuit. There's a specific kind of hunger you feel when you're 20 years old, working your third shift of the week at a campus library, watching your friends order pizza that you can't afford. It's a hunger that sits in your gut like a stone. It's the hunger of knowing that you are one flat tire, one medical bill, one textbook purchase away from dropping out. For 4 years, I lived with that hunger. I wore it like a second skin. I told myself it was character building. I told myself that being the poor student was a rite of passage. I told myself that my parents couldn't help me because the family business was struggling and the economy was tough. I was wrong. The business wasn't struggling, and I wasn't poor. I was being robbed, and the getaway driver was my mother, while my father sat in the passenger seat and watched it happen. My name is Mark Ellison. I am 26 years old. I am a certified public accountant, and 6 months ago, I sued my parents for $250,000. To understand the rage that fueled that lawsuit, you have to understand the family dynamic I grew up in. I was the youngest of three. My two older sisters, Brittany and Tiffany, were the princesses. They were 5 and 7 years older than me. Growing up, they were the center of my mother's universe. They were loud, demanding, and constantly in need of attention. My father, Frank, was a hard worker but a soft man. He inherited a mid-sized grocery store, Ellison's Market, from his parents. It was a staple in our town, a profitable, steady business that had put a roof over our heads for decades. Dad worked 70 hours a week keeping that store running. He was the quiet provider. He came home, ate dinner, and fell asleep in his chair. He avoided conflict like it was a contagious disease. My mother, Joyce, ran the household. And by ran, I mean she catered to Brittany and Tiffany's every whim. She never worked. She never earned a dime. Her entire identity was spending the money my father earned and my grandparents left behind. My sisters were difficult. They were the kind of girls who peaked in high school and refused to come down. They were popular, pretty, and completely unmotivated. They barely graduated high school. They both tried college. Brittany went to 3 different state schools in 2 years before dropping out because 8 a.m. classes were inhumane. Tiffany did 1 semester of fashion school before deciding it was too much math and moved back home to find herself. I was different. I was the quiet one. I was the one who did his homework without being asked. I was the one who worked at the grocery store on weekends starting at age 14, stocking shelves for Dad while my sisters were at the mall spending his money. I remember one Christmas when I was 17. We were all exchanging gifts. I had saved up my wages from the grocery store to buy Brittany a nice, leather-bound journal and Tiffany a set of art pens because she said she wanted to get into sketching. I spent about $50 on each of them. They opened the gifts and scoffed. A notebook. Brittany laughed, tossing it onto the coffee table. Thanks, Mark. I'll use it to write my grocery lists. Pens, Tiffany said, rolling her eyes. I wanted the iPad Pro, Mark. Not pens. And they opened Mom's gifts. Designer bags. Louis Vuitton. Gucci. Thousands of dollars worth of leather. Oh my God, Mom. You're the best, they shrieked, hugging her. Mom beamed. Only the best for my girls. I sat there, holding my gift, a pack of socks. You need socks, Mark, Mom said. You wear holes in yours. When I got accepted into the state university's business program, I was ecstatic. I had the grades. I had the drive. I sat my parents down at the kitchen table to discuss tuition. We're a little tight right now, Mark, Mom said, avoiding my eyes. She was aggressively chopping vegetables for a salad, a sure sign she didn't want to talk. Business at the store has been slow. The margins are thin. You're smart. You can get loans. Maybe a scholarship. I looked at Dad. He was reading the newspaper. He didn't look up. He just turned the page, shrinking into himself. Loans? I asked. But you guys paid for Brittany and Tiffany's tuition, or their attempts at it. And you paid for Brittany's car and Tiffany's apartment in the city for that year she tried to be a model. That was different, Mom snapped, slamming the knife down. The economy was better then. Don't be selfish, Mark. You have to pull your own weight. It builds character. A man should pay his own way. Dad, I asked, is the store really doing that bad? Dad finally looked up. His eyes were sad, tired. He looked at Mom, then back at me. He looked like a man who had surrendered a long time ago. Listen to your mother, Mark. We don't have the liquidity right now. You'll have to figure it out. He lied to me. I know that now. He looked me in the eye and lied because he was too afraid to tell his wife no. So I did it. I figured it out. I took out the maximum in student loans. I applied for Pell Grants. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus library shelving books. But that wasn't enough to cover rent and food. So I took a second job doing landscaping on the weekends. I remember one Saturday in November of my sophomore year. It was freezing rain. I was digging a drainage ditch for a wealthy family in the suburbs. My hands were blistered. My boots were leaking. I was covered in mud, shivering, trying to earn $150 so I could buy my intermediate accounting textbook. I took a break to drink some water. I pulled out my phone to check the time. A notification popped up from Instagram. It was Brittany. She and Tiffany were in Cabo. The photo showed them on a yacht, holding champagne glasses, wearing bikinis that probably cost more than my weekly paycheck. They were tan. They were laughing. The caption read, "Winter blues? Never heard of her. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for the graduation present. Even though we didn't graduate, LOL. Hashtag Cabo, hashtag sister trip." I stared at the screen. Raindrops hit the glass, blurring their smiles. I looked at my muddy hands. I looked at the ditch. I felt a bitterness take root in my chest. Why? I wondered. Why does the son who works get nothing, while the daughters who quit get everything? But I kept my head down. I kept digging. My junior year Christmas was the lowest point. The dorms were closing for break, but I couldn't afford to go home. Or rather, I couldn't afford to go where they were going. Mom and Dad took the girls to Aspen for a ski trip. "It's a shame you have to work, Mark," Mom told me on the phone. "But those library shifts are important. We'll miss you on the slopes." I spent Christmas Day in my freezing off-campus apartment, eating a turkey sandwich I bought from a gas station. I watched their Instagram stories. Brittany in a new ski suit. Tiffany drinking hot cocoa by a massive fireplace. I wondered how Dad afforded it if the store was struggling. I assumed he took out a loan. I felt guilty for him. I didn't know he was paying for it with my money. I graduated with high honors, cum laude. I walked across the stage with holes in my shoes that I had colored in with a black Sharpie, so no one would notice. My parents came to graduation. Mom complained that the seats were hard and the ceremony was too long. Dad looked proud, but didn't say much. Brittany and Tiffany didn't come. They had a spa weekend scheduled. I landed a job at a top accounting firm in the city. I moved into a small apartment. I started paying down my $60,000 debt. I lived frugally. I was an accountant. I knew the value of a dollar. My sisters, meanwhile, had moved back home. They were technically working at Ellison's Market now, but working was a loose term. They were consultants. They sat in the back office, gossiping and online shopping, while Dad did the heavy lifting. They were on the payroll, earning salaries they didn't earn, driving cars Dad paid for, living in the house for free. Then came Thanksgiving. This past November, the whole extended family gathered at my parents' house. My Uncle Ben, my father's older brother, was there. Uncle Ben was a successful contractor who lived 2 states away. I hadn't seen him in years because I was always working during holidays. Dinner was the usual affair. Mom fussing over the girls. Brittany talking about her new boyfriend who was an entrepreneur, unemployed. Tiffany complaining that her jewelry brand wasn't taking off because the algorithm was rigged against her. I sat there, eating turkey, thinking about my loan payment due on the 1st. "So, Mark," Uncle Ben boomed, raising his wine glass. He was a loud, jovial man. "I hear you're CPA now. Big-time accountant." "Trying to be," I smiled. "Just got my certification." "Good for you," Ben said. He looked around the table. Finally, a graduate on the Ellison side. I was starting to worry Mom and Dad's legacy was going to waste. He chuckled. Brittany and Tiffany rolled their eyes. "What legacy?" Tiffany asked, pouring herself more wine. Grandma and Grandpa just left the store to Dad. And the house. Ben frowned. He put his glass down. The store? No, thief. I'm talking about the cash. The education trust. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the clock ticking on the wall. My mother froze. She was holding the gravy boat. Her hand started to shake. A drop of gravy hit the white tablecloth. Ben, my father said, his voice low. Don't what? Ben asked, looking confused. He looked around the table, sensing the tension but not understanding it. It's not a secret, Frank. Mom and Dad sold that rental property in Florida right before they passed in '05. They put the cash into a trust, earmarked for education. He looked at me. I assumed that's how you got through school without debt, right? Smart kid like you? My kids used theirs for med school and engineering. It was a lifesaver. I felt the blood drain from my face. I felt cold. What trust, Ben? The grandchildren's trust, Ben said. $250,000 for each grandchild. Meant to cover tuition, room, board. The works. I did the math. 3 kids. That was $750,000. Wait, I said. You're saying Grandpa left me $250,000 for college? Yeah, Ben said. Wait, didn't you know? Frank, Joyce, you guys were the trustees for your kids' shares until they turned 18. I looked at my father. I waited for him to look shocked. I waited for him to say, what money? I didn't know about this. But he didn't. He looked down at his plate. He looked ashamed. He shrank into his chair. He knew. I looked at my mother. She was pale, staring at the tablecloth, her lips pressed into a thin line. Mom, I asked. Dad, it wasn't that much, Mom stammered. And we used it for the family. Used it for what? I asked. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a knife. I took out $60,000 in loans, Mom. I ate expired food. I sold my blood to buy software. Where is my $250,000? It's gone, Mom yelled, suddenly defensive. She slammed the gravy boat down. Okay, it's gone. We had expenses. Raising 3 kids is expensive. Brittany and Tiffany needed help. They struggled in school. They needed tutors. They needed experiences to help them find their path. Experiences? I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. You mean the trip to Bali? The music festivals? The gap years that lasted 5 years? You spent my college fund on their vacations. We didn't spend your money, Mom cried. It was family money. It all goes into one pot. And frankly, Mark, we didn't need it. You're smart. You're resourceful. Your sisters, they need more help. They're delicate. Delicate. I laughed. It was a dark, angry sound. They're lazy. And you stole from me to enable them. You stole my future to pay for their parties. I turned to my father. This was the moment. The moment he could redeem himself. Dad, I said, did you know? He looked up. His face was gray. Mark, did you? No. I knew, he whispered. The air left the room. And you let her do it? She said the girls needed it, Dad mumbled. She handled the finances. I tried to stop her a few times, Mark. I did. But she said you were strong. She said you could handle the struggle. I wanted to keep the peace. Keep the peace. I shouted. You sacrificed my future to keep the peace with her? You watched me struggle for 4 years. You watched me tie my shoes together. And you said nothing? You signed the checks. I didn't want to fight, he said weakly. I was a coward. Well, you're going to fight now, I said. Because I'm suing you. Both of you. You wouldn't dare. Brittany sneered from the end of the table. She looked bored, like this was just another drama she could ignore. You're going to arrest your own parents? Over money? You're so greedy, Mark. Greedy? I looked at her designer purse sitting on the floor. A Louis Vuitton. That purse cost more than my entire sophomore year budget. You're living on my money, Brittany. Every drink you bought, every flight you took, that was mine. You were a parasite. I walked out. The next day, my phone rang. I expected it to be Mom screaming or Brittany crying. It was Uncle Ben. Mark, he said, can I meet you? I'm still in town. I'm at the coffee shop near your office. I met him. Uncle Ben looked distraught. He had files on the table. I'm so sorry, kid, Ben said, his eyes watering. I had no idea. I assumed. I assumed Frank was handling it. I assumed you were set. They spent it all, Ben, I said. All of it. I failed you, Ben said, shaking his head. Mom and Dad, your grandparents, they set up that trust specifically because they were worried about Joyce. They knew she liked the finer things. They wanted to make sure the grandkids were protected. I was supposed to be the backup trustee, but I let Frank handle the paperwork because he's my brother. I trusted him. He pushed the files toward me. These are copies of the original trust documents, Ben said, and I'm going to help you. I know a forensic accountant. I know a lawyer. I'm paying for them. You're going to get every dime back, Mark. I promise you that. With Ben's help, we launched the audit. I spent 3 nights matching the withdrawals to my sister's Instagram timelines. It was sickeningly easy. Withdrawal, $5,000 August 12th, Instagram post. Tiffany's new spiritual shaman retreat in Sedona, August 14th. Withdrawal, $12,000 December 10th, Instagram post. Aspen Ski Bunny, December 12th. My portion, my specific subtrust, had been liquidated the year I turned 18. My mother had forged my signature on a release form, and my father had notarized it. They claimed the funds were being transferred to a high-yield savings account. It went straight into their joint checking account. I filed the lawsuit. Mark Ellison versus Joyce and Frank Ellison. Breach of fiduciary duty. Fraud. Conversion. The fallout was immediate. But before Dad came to see me, Mom showed up. 2 days after being served, she banged on my apartment door at 7 a.m. "Open up, Mark," she screamed. I opened the door. She looked furious. Not sorry. Furious. "How dare you," she spat, "sending a sheriff to my house, embarrassing us in front of the neighbors? Drop this lawsuit immediately." "Where's my money?" I asked calmly. "You're ruining this family over money," she yelled. "It's vulgar. You're behaving like a stranger. You should be grateful we raised you." "You didn't raise me," I said. "You survived me. You fed the girls and threw me the scraps. Get out of my hallway before I call the police." She stared at me, shocked that her guilt trip wasn't working. "You'll regret this. You'll die alone with your money." "At least it will be my money," I said, and slammed the door. 3 weeks after I filed the suit, there was a knock on my apartment door. It was Dad. He looked terrible. He had lost 20 pounds. His eyes were red-rimmed. He was wearing wrinkled clothes. He was holding a thick manila envelope. "Can I come in?" he asked. His voice was broken. I let him in. I didn't offer him a drink. I stood by the door, arms crossed. "If you're here to ask me to drop the lawsuit," I said, "you can leave. Mom already tried that. It didn't work." "I'm not here to ask you to stop," he said. He walked over to my small dining table and sat down heavily. "I'm here to pay you. You have $250,000. I asked. "Mom said you were tapped out." "I don't have the cash," he said, "but I have assets." He looked up at me. Tears were streaming down his face. When Ben spoke up at dinner, he started, his voice trembling. "It woke me up, Mark. For 30 years, I've been a passenger in my own life. I let Joyce drive. I let her spoil the girls. I let her rob you. I told myself it was for the family, but it wasn't. It was because I was a coward. I was afraid of her temper. I was afraid she would leave me." He wiped his eyes. "You were right. I sat there and watched you starve. I signed the checks because it was easier than fighting her. I failed you as a father. A father protects his children. I threw you to the wolves." "It's a little late for that, Dad." "I know," he said. "I can't undo it, but I can pay the debt." He pushed the manila envelope across the table. "What is this?" "I served Joyce with divorce papers yesterday," he said, "and I evicted her." I froze. "You evicted her? From the house?" "It's my house, Mark," Dad said, his voice hardening. "My parents left it to me before I married her. I never put her name on the deed. She nagged me for 30 years to do it, but that was the one thing I never caved on. It's separate property. So she has nothing." "She has nothing," Dad confirmed. She never worked a day in her life. She has no savings because she spent it all on your sisters. She's staying at a cheap motel tonight. She'll have to figure it out, just like she told you to figure it out." He pointed to the envelope. "And this is your refund." I opened the envelope. It was a deed, a property transfer deed. Title of property: Ellison's Market, Land and Business. Transferee: Mark Ellison. The store. I asked, bewildered. "Dad, this is your life. This is your retirement. This is Grandpa's legacy." "It's the only asset I have that hasn't been tainted by her," he said. "It's worth way more than $250,000. The real estate alone is worth $1 million. The business generates cash. Take it. It's debt-free. Consider it the principal plus interest plus damages for having a coward for a father." "But what about you?" I asked. "How will you live?" "I still have the house," he said. "I'll be fine. I'm 60 years old. I can stock shelves. I can work. Maybe you'd hire me as a manager if you can stand to look at me." I looked at the deed. Then I looked at my father. He wasn't the passive passenger anymore. He had finally taken the wheel. He had kicked the thief out of the car and handed me the keys to the kingdom. "And the girls?" I asked. "Brittany and Tiffany? They work there." Dad smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a grim, justice-filled smile. "They work there," he confirmed. "Which means, as of the moment you signed that paper, you are their boss." The next morning, I walked into Ellison's Market. I wasn't wearing my landscaping clothes. I was wearing my best suit. I carried a briefcase. I walked past the registers. Brittany was at the customer service desk, filing her nails, ignoring a customer who was waiting for a lottery ticket. Tiffany was in the back office, feet up on the desk, probably online shopping on the company computer. Dad was there, wearing his apron. He looked lighter. He walked over to the PA system. "Attention, staff," he said, his voice booming over the speakers. "Could everyone please gather at the front? We have an announcement." My sisters wandered up, looking annoyed. Mom wasn't there. She was probably frantically calling them from her motel room. "What is it, Dad?" Tiffany sighed, checking her watch. "I have a lunch date at noon." "I have transferred ownership of Ellison's Market," Dad said. "Effective immediately, I am stepping down as owner." "You sold it," Brittany gasped. "But what about our jobs? What about our legacy? How will we pay for things?" "I didn't sell it," Dad said. "I gave it away, to the rightful owner, to pay a debt." He pointed at me. "Meet your new boss," Dad said. The look on their faces was worth every bowl of ramen I ate for 4 years. It was worth every sleepless night. It was worth the plasma donation scars. "Mark," Tiffany laughed nervously. "Is this a joke?" "Dad, tell him to leave." "No joke," I said. I walked over to the manager's office door, the office Tiffany had been using as a lounge. "Tiffany, get out of the chair. I need to review the payroll. I have a feeling we're overstaffed." "You can't do this," Brittany screamed. "We're family. You can't fire family." "Family?" I asked. "Family doesn't steal from family. But don't worry, I'm not going to fire you." I smiled. "But the free ride is over. I'm cutting your salaries to minimum wage. No more sitting in the office. No more leaving early. You're stocking shelves. You're scrubbing the floors. And today you're cleaning the dairy cooler. It hasn't been deep cleaned in 6 months because you two were supposed to hire a crew and never did. There's mold under the racks. Get scrubbing." "I'm not doing that," Tiffany yelled. "I have a degree in fashion." "You dropped out," I reminded her. "And right now, Mom is calling you, isn't she? She needs money. She has nowhere to live." My sisters exchanged a panicked look. They knew. "Mom has 0 assets," I said coldly. "Dad kept the house. I have the store. If you quit, you have 0 income. Who is going to pay for Mom's motel room? Who is going to pay for your car insurance? You need this job." Tiffany froze. She looked at Dad. Dad just shrugged and put a price sticker on a can of soup. She realized the well had run dry. Their loyalty shifted in an instant. They realized they couldn't afford to be on Mom's team anymore. She picked up her name tag. She put on an apron. "It's been 6 months. My father works for me as the general manager. We grab lunch together every day. We're rebuilding our relationship brick by brick. He's still sad about the marriage, but he sleeps better at night. He finally feels like a father. Uncle Ben calls me every Friday. We go over the profit and loss statements. He advises me on inventory and expansion. He's the mentor I never had. He told me last week, "Your grandfather will be proud. You're running this ship tighter than Frank ever did." Mom is struggling. She's living in a tiny studio apartment that my sisters are barely scraping together enough money to pay for. She had to get a job as a greeter at a discount store. She hates it. She sends me letters sometimes, begging for forgiveness and money. I open them and throw them away. Brittany and Tiffany were bitter for the first 3 months. They complained. They cried. They threatened to quit every day. But then something shifted. Last week, I walked into the break room. I expected to see them on their phones, scrolling Instagram, ignoring their duties. Instead, they were sitting at the table, looking at a stack of papers. "What's this?" I asked. Tiffany looked up. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun. She looked tired, but for the first time in her life, she looked real. "It's a ledger," she said quietly. We went through Mom's old records. We calculated exactly how much of your money we spent. The trips, the clothes, the car repairs. Brittany pushed a piece of paper toward me. It was a handwritten payment plan. "We want to pay it back," Brittany said. "We know we can't pay it all at once. But can you garnish our wages? Take 20% out of every check." We did the math. It will take us 15 years, but we want to do it. I looked at the paper. I looked at them. "Why?" I asked. "Because we were parasites," Tiffany said, using the word I had thrown at her. "We see that now. We see Dad working. We see Mom begging. We don't want to be like her. We want to earn our place." Brittany nodded. She pulled out a brochure. "Also, we enrolled in community college. Night classes. I'm taking business management. Tiffany is taking accounting. We want to actually be useful here, if you'll let us." I looked at the brochure. It was for the same community college I had considered before getting my scholarship. I felt the last bit of ice in my chest melt. Not forgiveness, exactly, but respect. "Okay," I said. "We'll set up the wage garnishment. And if you pass your classes with a B or higher, the store will reimburse your tuition." They both started to cry. Not the fake tears they used on Mom. Real tears. "Thank you, Mark," Tiffany whispered. "Thank you." "Get back to work," I said, but I smiled. Every time I see them sweating, hauling boxes of produce, or studying in the break room with highlighters and textbooks, I remember the nights I spent freezing in the library. And I think character building. They're finally getting the education they paid for with my money. And this time, they're actually learning something. Have you ever discovered that your family stole your future to fund their own lifestyle? Did you have to take extreme measures to get back what was yours? If you believe that justice is a dish best served with a side of hard labor, hit that like button and subscribe. #Inheritance Wars.